People say they want the simple life, but the truth is, simple living isn't always simple. It's blisters on your palms, dirt under your nails, and long days that don't end when the sun goes down. Simple doesn't mean easy. It means choosing to trade convenience for something deeper, slower, harder, but richer. From the outside, it may look like quiet mornings and sweeping views, but the truth is, simple living is sacrifice. It's loosening your grip on what doesn't last to hold tighter to what does. That's how those came before me lived. Steady hands, long days, and the belief that today's hard work was always for tomorrow's provision. And that's the thread we're still holding on to today. I've been thinking a lot recently. For most of history, home wasn't just where you returned to after work. It was the work. Fathers, mothers, and children didn't scatter to different places each morning. Their labor was bound to the same soil, the same roof, the same table. I can't help but wonder, what would it look like if more of our lives were tethered back to our home again? My girls and I picked cherries from the old tree out back, fingers stained red, skirts filled with fruit. The work is sticky and it takes time, but that's the kind of patience that turns fleeting moments into something lasting. They don't know it yet, but this is a kind of rooted work that shaped me too. Work that ties you to heritage and land in ways you only understand later. The garden is where simple living shows its truest colors. After nearly a decade of gardening here, I'm still learning. The soil is sandy, unlike the rich black earth back on my family's farm, and it humbles me year after year. We didn't build the garden fence I had dreamed of, but we built what we could. Welded wire isn't fancy, but it keeps the deer and rabbits out and makes mowing easier. That's another truth. Simple living means choosing what's responsible over what's ideal. My husband drove the posts, the tiller turned the soil, and Evie planted the corn seed row by row. Generations before us didn't have what they wanted either. They made do with what they had in reach. And maybe that's why their work lasted, because it was built on resourcefulness instead of perfection. And that got me thinking, while we were building the fence, my grandpa used to tell me how when he was a boy, he grew up surrounded by his extended family, all of them working side by side. In these Appalachian hills, we didn't have the coal mines that pulled so many fathers away. Families stayed rooted in their home longer. In fact, he remembered a time when it wasn't until the 40s or 50s that families in our area started to see that separation. It makes me wonder, was that togetherness, that household economy, as we call it today, the missing link we're craving? Months later, and the corn towers over my girls. I'm pulling beans from the vine, and I dig around in the cucumbers hiding in the shade, while the second planting of squash and zucchini begin to bear fruit. The waiting, the setbacks, the harvest, it all teaches patience. And I can't help but wonder, when did we accept that a father's work belonged away from the family and not among them? The Industrial Revolution changed the world, yes, but it also fractured something. Families that once worked shoulder to shoulder found themselves scattered, their rhythms dictated by a factory whistle instead of the needs of the land. What would it look like if our homes became more central again? Passing by, I catch Colby splitting wood, just a small glimpse of what simple living really is. Putting in the work today to stay warm tomorrow. And it makes me think, what work am I doing now that will bless the future version of me or of my children? Later, I sit on the porch snapping a small handful of beans. Not enough for supper, so I'll freeze them until I have more. And as I work, I think of the women before me who did the same thing. Skirts brushing the porch boards, bowls filling slowly, their hands repeating the same steady rhythm. Porch work was never lesser work. In the household economy, women's labor wasn't separate from provision. It was provision. And I can't help but ask, what are the beans in our lives today? The small, ordinary things we tend to overlook. In the kitchen, I fall back on one of our family's staples, banana muffins sweetened with honey and maple syrup. It starts with 3 ripe bananas, mashed until smooth. I add an egg, melted butter, and milk. Simple ingredients most of us have on hand. Then in goes the honey and maple. There's a depth of flavor in these two that sugar can't give, and I love knowing I can make something sweet without much fuss. I stir in flour, cinnamon, and baking powder, careful not to overmix. Tender muffins come from restraint, and isn't that true of life too? Sometimes gentle is best. By the way, you can find this banana muffin recipe along with more of our heirloom recipes over at ourhomeandheritage.com. I also send out a weekly email, nothing fancy, just homemaking rhythms, seasonal ideas, and little updates about our life here. I'd love for you to join if you'd like to walk this journey alongside us. I spoon the batter into tins, sprinkle a little brown sugar on top, most times, today I didn't, and slide them into the oven. 20 minutes later, and the kitchen is filled with that familiar, warm smell. This isn't the kind of baking that wins awards. It's the kind of baking that feeds your people on a Tuesday morning when the laundry is piled up and the house is noisy. This is how Appalachian kitchens endured. Not with fancy desserts, but with simple, reliable recipes that kept households steady. And the truth is, the resilience wasn't in the food itself, but in the hands that kept showing up day after day. And as I set the muffins on the counter, I find myself wondering, have we forgotten what a home once was? The bakery, the dairy, the school, the workshop, the place where every hand contributed to the family's provision. What if reclaiming even a piece of that could change the way we live today? From the ridge, you can see the mountains stretch for miles. Our home place lies in the distance, the land where my family has farmed for generations. Like I said before, my grandpa remembered growing up surrounded by family, every day shaped by the work of land and kin. And here we are, still living pieces of that rhythm. It makes me wonder, is that togetherness, that shared work and rootedness, is that the very thing that our modern lives are missing? In the hayfield, my dad bales the first cutting while my girls ride along in the cab. I can still remember the days before we had a cab, riding on my grandpa's lap, the heat pressing down, dust in the air, and the steady rhythm of the baler behind us. Some of my best naps were taken on that tractor seat. Haymaking may look simple, but it's one of the most critical jobs of the year. We wait for the perfect stretch of dry days, because rain at the wrong time can ruin everything. That old saying, make hay while the sun shines, isn't just for farmers. It's wisdom for all of us. Take the opportunity while it's here. The low hum of the tractor, the steady clank of the baler, those sounds fold into the hills the same way they did when my grandfather worked these fields. And now my girls hear them too. That's the gift of heritage. The work repeats, but the faces change. Hay has always been more than feed. It's what carried families through winter, the reason barns were built, and the rhythm tying one generation to the next. And I wonder if that's what we're really passing down, not just work, but memory, belonging, a way of seeing life. The cattle graze steady in the field, their rhythms reminding me that the slow and consistent is what endures. And maybe that's the lesson for us too. Legacy isn't built in a rush, but season by season, generation by generation. And that's the deeper truth about simple living. It isn't glamorous, it isn't always convenient, but it's steady and it lasts. It's the resilience of families who kept showing up, who worked side by side, who passed it on. I've come to see that home has always been the backbone of life, the place where men, women, and children shared the same work, the same rhythms. And I wonder, what would change for us if we recovered even a fraction of that? You don't need a farm to begin. Wherever you are, every act of patience, every habit of care, every skill you pass down, it all builds legacy. Thank you for following along with us today. Until next time, friend.